Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Purdy Insurance. Visit Purdy Insurance on Market Street in Sunbury or visit online at purdyinsurance.com. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Sponsored by Purdy Insurance. Now, from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Today's show brought to you by Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Auto, home, life, business, RV, boats, whatever it may be. Motorcycle. You want to make sure you're fully insured. They'll do everything they can to save you money, and they're just pros. All the way through. All the way through, they're pros. Great people who know their business, and that's insurance. Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. And we are in the Sunbury Motors Studio. Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia. Routes 11 and 15, Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Dave Revsine in a few moments. But now we go to the complaint department, and they're usually not small complaints. It's usually not a complaint you can blow off.
It actually was a pretty quiet weekend until a couple things that came through last night. I watched a lot of Little League baseball. I watched the Little League Classic last night. I watched a lot of preseason football in the NFL, so it was pretty good until I saw a couple things come by on last night.
Okay, and?
So the first one, all right. So the first one is during the Sunday night broadcast last night. I love David Cohn on Yes. He does a great job with the Yankees, but he and Eduardo Perez had a bad night last night on ESPN during the broadcast. So I guess all the players had different types of fun, kid-like bats during the Little League Classic last night. So Bryce Harper's was a bat with the Philly Fanatic on it. And he said, "Is that a SpongeBob bat?"
No, senor! No, senor! No, senor!
I could even tell from the TV that was a Fanatic bat because it's light green and it's got the Fanatic's face on it. And listen, not for anything, you're in a minor league ballpark. You're a little bit closer to the plate than you are in most major league ballparks. What are you looking at? Come on, Coney. You're better than that. And then Eduardo Perez, they're interviewing Nick Castellanos in game, and Eduardo Perez asked Nick Castellanos an awkward question about the Fanatic, saying the Fanatic must be a really tough mascot to be around. What? What do you want the guy to say? You want him to chastise his own team's mascot? I mean, what kind of question is that? Hey, we got to think sometimes before we speak. I know it's hard. I've had my share of mistakes. All right, I'm not going to pretend I'm perfect.
And most of them are in this segment.
There you go. But still, come on, man. It's called a little bit of research before you do these player interviews.
Well,
don't put him in that kind of spot to try to rip the Philly Fanatic. What, are you kidding me?
I mean, that's why you talk to these guys around the batting cage. Okay? That the old thing about talk to them around the batting cage, that's why you do it that way. Look, one of the keys when you ask questions, okay, so everybody understands, 9.8 times out of 10, maybe 9.9 times out of 10, when I ask a question on the show, I get exactly the answer I expect because you've done research on it. Or you've talked to them before, so you know what the answer is going to be. Now, you, the audience, may not know what the answer is going to be, but 9.9 times out of 10, 9.8 out of 10, I know what the answer is when I ask the question. And most people that do research on interviews, that's what you'll get. If you do none, then you end up with questions like that. So, oh, my goodness. All right. Well, Dave Revsine's next. We'll talk to him in a moment as we continue on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Okay, welcome back. And he is unquestionably one of the best in the business, and it's great to always talk with him. And that's Dave Revsine from BTN. Dave, it was great to see you a couple of weeks ago. Welcome back to the show.
Good to be on with you as always, Steve. Thank you.
Okay, you've gone through the tour. Anything along the way that you learned that maybe you didn't quite know before as you went through from town to town?
Well, so the one thing I do need to say this year, Steve, and I know I mentioned this to you when I saw you in State College.
Yeah.
So this was year 17. This will be year 17 of the network. We've done a tour 16 times. We didn't do it in the COVID year for obvious reasons. I had missed one stop in the first 15 tours, and I did it to do something with the commissioner a number of years ago. This year I had to miss 5. I missed 3 for the first expansion announcement. So I didn't see Minnesota, Nebraska, Northwestern, because I was going to go, and then literally the day before we thought with all the rumbling I ought to stay back, and obviously that turned out to be a prudent move. And then I was moving one of my daughters into college, so I knew I was going to miss Michigan and Michigan State. So I only saw 9. I feel like I kind of cheated a little bit this year. That being said, I think, again, I didn't see Michigan, but on paper I obviously think they're really good. I think it's a 3-team race in the East. I mean, I think Penn State's really, really good. I'm not just playing to your audience. I think they're outstanding. Over in the West, I think the thing stood out to me is the last team we saw, Wisconsin, I think is probably the team to beat. Based on what we saw, I think Illinois is in that conversation, and I think Hudson Card is going to be an amazing revelation at quarterback. I don't know that they have enough around him to come close to competing at Purdue, but he's really good.
Yeah. You asked me at the Penn State camp what, Steve, any surprises here? And I said to you, the biggest surprise has been there's no surprise. So I know in the end, you only get a couple of hours in there and so forth. But did they kind of meet an expectation, maybe, Ed, going in?
Oh, yeah. No, I thought they were really good. I mean, this is the year that they're going to have to do something, right? I mean, and by do something, I mean, it's unfair, right? They won the Rose Bowl last year. They went 11-2. But they're going to have to beat one of Ohio State or Michigan this year, I think. They're too talented not to, right? They're too, I think, toss-up games. Again, I didn't see Michigan, so I think they're really good, but Penn State gets Michigan at home. You have to go to Columbus. I thought, and I know Howard and Jerry thought, that Penn State had many fewer question marks than Ohio State did. I just think they're better defensively. They're certainly more consistent. You know more about the quarterback. I think they're much better on the offensive line. So there's no reason they shouldn't be able to win one of those games this year. But no, Penn State's really good. I mean, exactly what you said. Like, I keep coming back to, if Trey Potts is your number 3 running back, you're pretty good. Like, they've just got a lot of, and if Dennis Sutton is your 3rd best edge rusher, I mean, they're just really good, man. They've got a lot of good pieces.
Yeah, no question. All right, I want to get to, since, obviously, I'm not talking out of turn here because I told Dave this directly. I said, when it comes to all this breaking news, especially with conference realignment, he handles this better than anybody I see on TV because there's a lot of moving parts. He won't say it, I will. Dave, now you've got the additions, USC, UCLA. That's been baked in now for more than a year. Now there's this Oregon-Washington situation. So there'll have to be obviously some changes. What is now your feel of an 18-team conference? And does it still feel like a conference at 18?
It does, but I think you're going to really have to go out of your way. Thank you for the kind words, by the way. Very nice of you to say. I think you're going to have to go out of your way to make sure everyone plays one another. Like, it cannot be a situation where you play a team once every 6 years, because at that point you're not a conference.
Bravo.
So, one of the things that we were tossing about, a suggestion that I had heard and that I really like, is give everyone, kind of one rivalry. I know Penn State unrivaled, but let's say Michigan State let's just say for purposes of conversation, Michigan State's your rival, right? And then you kind of go down the list, and Michigan, Ohio State, and Illinois, Northwestern, Purdue, and Indiana, Iowa, and probably Wisconsin. You can kind of go through, right? And you can figure out who that one rival would be. Maybe it's Iowa, Nebraska, and Wisconsin, Minnesota, whatever it might be. I think there's a logical one for everyone. Play that team every year, okay? And then 1 year, play one team from one side of every one of those other 8 rivalries, right? So, like, 1 year you'd play USC, and then the other year you'd play UCLA. 1 year you'd play Illinois, the other year you'd play Northwestern. Go on down the line. That gives you 9 conference games a year. It means you play everyone once every couple of years. So, and then you play your rival every year. So to me, if you're playing every team in your league every other year, then I think it's still a league. But I think once you get much beyond that, I mean, again, if you're going 3 or 4 years without playing a team, to me, it's not a real conference. So that's one way to do it. I'm sure there are other ways to do it, but just figure out a way to play one another.
And that is, in terms of our opinion together, that's so spot on with how I feel. To me, you need to be playing everybody. That's why I liked what they did with the 16-team schedule originally, that within a 4-year span, you'd play everybody home and away. So now you have to adjust that. And in basketball, I got the feeling it was going to be 3, with the 18 schools, be 3 home and aways and 14 one plays. At least you play everybody.
Yes. Yeah, right. And so, again, I loved that, the 16-team, the Flex Protect, and I thought it was really good.
Me too.
I think you're going to have, like here, you're going to get to a situation where, I mean, maybe you could protect 3 rivalries for Iowa, but I'm not convinced you can. Right. But if they still played, one of those teams every year, again, let's just say for purposes of discussion, it's Nebraska, and then every other year they played, either, Minnesota or Wisconsin, I still think that's pretty good. So are you playing every one of your rivals every year? No, maybe not from their perspective. But I still think if you can play them every other year and then play one team every year, I still think that's good.
And not only that, Dave, but, something I'm sure that you hear along the way, especially when it comes to non-conference scheduling, hey, they should be playing somebody. And we hear that all the time. By adding Oregon, Washington to go with USC and UCLA, how do you feel about the possibility of really a lot of dynamic potential matchups just within the conference? The heck with non-conference play, but within the conference.
Well, that's the best part of it, is we're going to have some incredible games. I mean, conference play is just going to be chock full of really good, intriguing games. I mean, you are adding 4 very good programs.
Yeah.
I mean, a couple of elite ones, right? I mean, I think Oregon has been elite here in recent years. USC, I understand they've slipped, but certainly historically they're elite. And then, Washington's played in the 3rd most Rose Bowls all time. UCLA is no slouch. I mean, these are 4 really good programs, and they're going to be playing someone from the league every week. So the regular season is going to be incredible, Steve. I don't think we have to sell anyone on that. I think the challenge for a lot of these schools is going to be figuring out what the balancing act of those non-conference games is. I had hoped all along when we started the college football playoff that you would really genuinely be rewarded for strength of schedule in much the same way that you are in the NCAA tournament. Like, you are rewarded for playing good non-conference games in college basketball. It gets you through to that tournament. It has not worked out that way in the college football playoff. Like, when a 2-loss team makes it over a 1-loss team, then I would think you're rewarding strength of schedule. It hasn't happened yet. We're in the last year of the 14 playoff. So I feel like if I'm scheduling non-conference games, I'm not sure I'm falling all over myself to schedule higher profile ones if I'm in a league like the Big Ten playing non-conference games if you're not going to reward strength of schedule. Now, maybe it's different when you get 12 teams in versus 4. I mean, it clearly will be different. Right. But I don't know. I mean, I really think they need to. Is there a formula? I don't know. Then you're going back to the computers. But I just think that the humans have not held that end of the bargain up, where they said we're gonna do this. We're rewarding strength of schedule, and I don't think it's happened yet.
There's another part too. The jobs of everybody in the 4 West Coast schools, their jobs all are about to get more difficult. Conversely, as you just pointed out correctly, the jobs of the existing ones of the conference are going to get more difficult. So I asked this question. I know there's going to be an expansion of the college football playoff, and you and I both know that the Big Ten can get 8, and maybe under the new format with 18 schools, they could get as many as 11 in the NCAA tournament. But in football, if you finish 8th, is that good?
I think it depends who you are.
Yes,
I really do.
I agree.
I mean, if you're Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, it's a catastrophe, right? I mean, a lot of places Penn State, I think it would be looked at as good. Is it good if you're I don't want to pick on anyone, but is it good if you're a team that traditionally finishes in the bottom half of the league? Yeah, it's great. So, I mean, I guess, it's no different than basketball. Let's use Northwestern, right? I mean, they made the tournament last year, second time ever. They're elated. Penn State makes the tournament and makes a nice run. They're elated. But they don't feel the same way if they finish 8th in football, just because those are the expectations of the program. So I think it depends on who you are. But, yeah, I mean, no doubt, right? You finished 8th place. Well, we're in the top half of the league. But – again, you got to sell your fan base on it, and we all know that every fan base has different perceptions of where they belong.
And again, I only asked that question for this reason. If you're going to go 1 through 18 and not divisions, that does come into play. Just something to think about as you go through it. You're right. It depends on who you are. If you've been one of the bottom teams, look at this. We moved to 8th. If you're one of the brands, you're saying, we're 8th. Yeah, but good teams are going to finish 8th. Yeah. I mean, I think, and I know that's your point, right? A good team will finish in 8th place in the Big Ten. Perhaps a really good team, but how about the bowl tie-ins? I mean, no one's talked about where's Big Ten 14 going, right? I mean, it's crazy to think of all that. So there's a lot of work to be done, no question. And there's some old Pac-12 bowls that might be free agents. That might be tie-ins because you'll need additional tie-ins. Yeah. No, it's totally fascinating. Dave, great conversation as always. Really enjoy the work and always enjoy talking with you. And good luck to having another one in college, okay?
Yeah, it was actually a double dip. We have twins this last
I know.
Group. So, we got 3 in college this year. So I'll be working a lot, Steve.
One point in my life, I did have 3 in college at the same time. So I can, let's use the proper word, empathize.
Yes. Let's just say I'm good at math. I knew it was coming from day one. So it didn't catch me by surprise.
It was 4 or 5 years ago you brought this up to me. So I did know you were planning. Dave, thanks so much. Right, appreciate you, my friend.
Be good. Right back at you. Thank you.
Dave Revsine, PTN. 4 or 5 years ago, he says, Steve, this is going to be a point. And I think he said it was 2023. He says, I'm going to have 5 in college at the same, or 3 in college at the same time.
Oof.
Well, so are you, buddy boy.
Yes, I know.
If I were you, I'd start putting together the 129 or whatever it's called.
All we have, the 529. Yep, all we have. 529.
Yep. If I were you, I'd start doing that because by the time you get there, it's going to be $1 million a piece.
Yep.
For 1 year. All right. Mike Gross coming up next. We'll talk Penn State football here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Sponsored by Purdy Insurance. Now, from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Today's show brought to you by Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Auto, home, life, business, motorcycle, boat, whatever it may be, RV. They'll make sure you're fully insured, and they will also do everything they can to save you money. Pros. Great people who are pros. All at Purdy Insurance. Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. And we're in the Sunbury Motors studio, Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia. Routes 11 at 15, Hummels Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. All right. Mike Gross joins us.
Hi, Steve.
Hello, Mike. How you been?
I've been great. How are you doing?
Doing really well.
That's good.
So,
That's good. You sound good.
This is it. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting year in a lot of ways. So what has been your read to this point on what we could see?
I would say that this is. I think the reason. I think there's a lot of hype for this Penn State team. Obviously, you don't need me to tell you that. But I think it's. I think the reason for it is two sort of interconnected things, which is depth and star power. I think this Penn State team, I don't know, I'm sure you're aware of Bruce Feldman's freak list. Bruce Feldman is the national college football writer for The Athletic, but he has this list of 101 players that he considers to be the craziest, most athletic, off-the-chart talents in the country. Of those 100 kids, 6 of them are from Penn State, more than any other program, and a couple of them might not even start. So that's an idea of both the star and none of the 6 are named Drew Allar. So that gives you a sense of that's sort of a short version of the depth and the star power that this team has, which is why people are so excited.
Mike, you have written about seasons leading in that didn't have expectations. You've written about seasons leading in that have expectations. Give us the writer's approach to each as to how you view expectations, whether they're lacking or explosive.
Yeah, I think one of the it's funny because I'm working on the big Penn State season preview, which will go in this Sunday. I'm working on that right now, so I'm kind of thinking about that exact question. You were prescient to ask that question. I think it's in this case with a lot of expectations. I think you look at. I get why the anticipation is so great, but what are some potential flies in the ointment? What are some things that could go wrong? Because there's so many moving parts on a football team that of course, there's always something like that for everybody, even for Georgia. So I think it's almost. It's almost an opposite thing. If the expectations are super high, then you sort of look at, well, here's how they should be tempered or why they should be tempered, and maybe the other way around when the expectations are not as high.
Interesting. Very interesting. All right.
Maybe.
So when you look at the expectations of this team, all right, what are a couple of items that are running through your mind where you, until you see performance on the field, maybe an area or two that should be tempered?
Yeah, well, one is, and this is one that nobody has talked about much, is the specialists, the kickers and the punters. And there's not much to say about it. The ball either goes through the uprights or it doesn't, and it's the guys that are going to be doing it are mostly, I think, unknown quantities at this point. But that's a very critical area that could cost you a game if it goes off the rails. I'm not saying it will, but again, it's kind of hard to talk about and write about because we just don't know anything about. We just don't know enough about these guys. And another one would be, I think the specific position groups where, for example, defensive tackle, losing Mustafa. You not only lost a great player, you lost a leader and a guy who brought a lot to the table. Same thing with Jair Brown in the safety group. Not only an excellent player, but a leader and a playmaker and a really dynamic guy. And maybe in the wide receiver group, what Jahan Dotson brought. Those things. I'm not saying Penn State doesn't have those things. I'm saying let's see, and particularly at safety and I would say at all three of those position groups, they have a lot of depth. They have a lot of athletes. I mean, they have a lot of defensive tackles. They have a lot of guys that are good candidates to be safeties, and needless to say, they have like a dozen guys that are in the stampede at wide receivers. So again, depth and star power. I think in those areas where maybe they don't have an obvious standout, they do have some depth, and let's let them sort of compete with each other and figure it out.
The other part is we know what the schedule happens to be. You don't know what the personnel grouping is going to be like on each particular week. But when you look at how the schedule lays out, does it lay out in such a way that it gives a team a chance, if they are that good, to then meet expectations? Just the layout of it.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I think, for example, week 3, that's kind of a tough game at Illinois against a team that knows how to defend, and they might not be quite as good defensively based on what's coming back as they were last year. And I mean, they were a tough out last year, and you're going into their place. I think that would be a tough spot, but overall. And I just did the Big Ten preview last week, so I was looking at everybody's schedule, and I think their schedule is relatively manageable. It's not easy. It's not going to be easy. You know, a lot of the Las Vegas contingent thinks that Maryland, for example, was a very scary game on the road against a team that has a quarterback. Now, you may remember last year, Penn State dominated that game on the line of scrimmage to the point where the quarterback was pretty negated and was running for his life. So I mean, I think the schedule is okay. I think there are some teams in the Big Ten that have tougher schedules. I think there are some that have a little bit easier path.
When you were doing the Big Ten preview, give me a couple of elements that stuck out to you about other teams within the conference that really caught your eye.
Well, for example, I was when I do each division, and I do them in order of my predicted finish, okay? So I was not expecting – I picked Iowa to win the West, and I was not expecting to do that going in, remembering just how brutal they were offensively last year. I mean, they were – a couple times I watched some of their games. Oh, my God. They were – it's hard to believe how bad they were. But they have 10 starters back on offense and a new quarterback. The Michigan transfer, who's a pretty good player. So, and they should be about as good defensively, and their special teams are as good as anybody's. So I think Iowa's a pretty scary team. They're one that maybe surprised me in a positive way a little bit.
Interesting. We've talked a lot about realignment. Now, that's not going to figure into what you're writing about at this particular time, so I'm going to take you out of the realm of the Big Ten for the moment in terms of this season. But Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA come into play starting next year. What will the dynamics of the Big Ten potentially be with the addition of those 4 schools, and how much more difficult did everybody's job become on both coasts because of it?
Well, I think it became a lot more difficult because, in a lot of ways, it's not just that you have to play USC. I mean, that's an obvious thing. We don't know how the league's going to be aligned. We don't know what the schedule's going to look like. But this year, if I look at these advanced metrics preseason rankings, I mean, Washington and Oregon and USC are top 15 teams. So obviously that makes things a lot more difficult. And then does it become more of an imperative to recruit more nationally, to recruit on the West Coast? I don't know. I don't know how Penn State will approach that. But, you know, we've gotten so used to this idea of catching up to Michigan and Ohio State. That's been the dynamic for so long now that it's not that anymore. Now it becomes a little different. I'm really interested to see what they do in terms of alignment and whatever they do. I guess they're not going to do divisions. It doesn't sound like, but however they do the schedule. It's really, and it's also so fluid. I mean, maybe it'll change next week. I mean, so that's really a wild card.
It's interesting because last Thursday, Mike Rhodes and I were in Hershey for an event. Char Moret was there with us as well.
Yeah, I actually got invited to that, and I had something. I would have gone to that and checked you guys out. But anyway.
Oh, good. No, it was quite the act. You would have loved it. Of
course. Yeah.
But when it came for my part of the Q&A, near the end, somebody asked me about Oregon and Washington coming in, and I was standing there listening. And as the question came up, there were groans from the crowd. Not about the question, but I think about the fact that Oregon and Washington are coming in, which I found to be that kind of reaction it's organic, it's raw, and I thought it was very interesting to hear. When you have talked to people, what have they said to you about the addition of Oregon and Washington, which just came out of the blue after the Pac-12 presented a TV contract that nobody wanted?
Yes, that's for sure. Why did they even present that? But anyway, I think the reaction that I've gotten from my readers and just from people that I talk to could be summarized in a collective groan. I think people, one of the things that makes college football special and that people have such an emotional connection to it, I think, is that regional element and the whole element of rivalries and the whole element of you can compete with the buddy that's in the office that you talk to at the water cooler every day because he's an alumni of your rival school, and you can compete year-round in recruiting and the whole thing. So I think that's getting lost a little bit with this conference realignment, and I have not heard from anybody who's thinking, hey man, that's going to be awesome when Oregon and Washington are in the league. I haven't heard anybody say that, even though those are great programs. And maybe I'm going to get to go to Seattle. I've never been to Seattle. I'm going to, that kind of thing. But I think there's a regional element to college football that is almost completely unique in all of American sports, and that I think most people feel is being compromised.
That's a really interesting point, because that has always been, and when Joe tried to put together the Eastern All Sports Conference, he was thinking about the regionalization part of it, but it is now expanded in such a way where the Big Ten is coast to coast. But it's interesting that you're getting the same reaction. And again, I didn't bring it up. It was a fan asking me the question, and I paused a moment just to kind of gauge the room. And the room was not happy. Not with the answer. I mean, I hadn't answered anything yet. But
yeah, I have gotten a fair number of email and just general, social media reactions, and it charts exactly with what you're saying. Yeah. Wow,
that is amazing. All right, so back to this football team. You look at the quarterback part of it. This is one of those teams that, quote, has to replace its starting quarterback. So how are you viewing this? What are you going to look for in the opening, let's say, month of the season that tells everybody that part's on track?
Well, I'm not worried. Well, worried is not the right word, but I don't. If I was a Penn State fan, I would not be worried about arm talent with Drew Allar and poise, because I think he's shown he's got tons of that. The only thing I would say is elite level decision making. That's the thing that sets quarterbacks apart, in my view. And I think that's the thing that we haven't seen enough of Drew Allar to know whether he has it or not. And when he did get thrown into the fire last year at Purdue, that was so early that it almost doesn't count for that. you could see what people are excited about in that tiny little sample size, but you couldn't really see what I'm talking about. The decision-making things, the understanding of the offense, that's so critical to me. That's so critical to getting the ball where it needs to go. If he can figure out where the ball needs to go, he's going to be able to get it there. I don't think there's any doubt about that, and I'm not worried about him as a leader, as a poised guy, as a being able to handle the pressure, even though there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure on Drew Allar. There's no way around that.
Mike, tremendous as always. Really appreciate the time and the insight.
Always good to talk to you, Steve. I appreciate it.
Mike Gross does great work. Always appreciate the time he gives us as well. Later in the week, well, in fact, Alex Kozora is on tomorrow. We'll get into, before we even decide to get into what's going on with the Steelers, we're going to get some more Matt Dirt. Shouldn't take too long there.
Get the lingerie on the deck. Call the janitor.
I'm sure, for example, that when it came to your fantasy draft, you did something crazy.
I'm sure I did. I can't say I remember anything off the top of my head at this moment, but he would be one that would remember. Because I have played several fantasy seasons with Alex. I mean, this year, putting Gardner Minshew on, I wasn't really a great move by you. And then Frank Gore's retired. We'll come back with more in a moment. Here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Bingo!
Training camp is over. Ended last night as they worked in Beaver Stadium last night. And no practice today. It's the first day of classes. In fact, I had my first class today. My only complaint is I have 20 in class. And that is a lot of projects to be grading. Normally it's in the 12 to 15 range. For some reason it's 20, but, we'll get through. It's what we have to do. I do have to tell you this one, though, Matt. So I'm done with class today. So I decide that I want to go get a coffee and a breakfast sandwich because I didn't get a chance to have breakfast before class this morning. So I go out to get a coffee, and I order, I'm not going to say where, people can probably end up guessing, but I order an extra large coffee with cream. Extra large coffee, just cream. And I order a breakfast sandwich where it said sausage and cheese on a toasted bagel, no egg. Okay? So this is all I order. Extra large coffee with cream, sausage and cheese on a bagel. Okay? This is what I end up getting. A large coffee with cream. And I didn't open up the bag until about 10 minutes later, someplace else. And it was sausage and egg on a bagel, no cheese.
Oh, jeez. See, I know you were going to get the egg, but... oh, boy.
I looked at it and went, well, that's not going to work. I didn't even have a bite. I threw it out. I was like, okay, we're done. Wasted the $4, but that's okay. But so you order extra large coffee, get a large. You order a bagel with sausage and cheese. So you get the bagel, you get the sausage, no cheese, and you get an egg.
Oh, I had a feeling that when you said that, no egg, I'm like, he definitely got an egg on his sandwich.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I did, as a matter of fact. So I just took it and, was able to snap my wrist and drop the free throw, and that was it.
There you go.
We're all done.
I've worked in food service before, and that is definitely not a difficult order. The only curveball is the egg, but you just got to read what you write down when they tell you. Sausage and cheese, no egg, on a bagel.
Well, no, I actually, because it took couple minutes to do this, I was just standing there and I was just looking at my order sheet. I was at my receipt, and it was written down the way I ordered it.
Oh, well then somebody just didn't read right, I guess.
Nope.
Oh, boy.
I mean, I laughed about it. Like, I threw it out. I went, "You got to be kidding me, really?" I said, "Okay, we're done." I just threw it out. Then I went over to Jersey Mike's and got a sub when I was done. I said, "We'll just get this instead."
I think he upgraded anyway.
I feel good.
Yes. Jersey Mike's is definitely the way to go.
Yeah. All right. Matt complains about the last place under 500 New York Yankees next.